First, I asked Tommy Schaefer to help me find somebody to kill my mom for $50,000. And he said no. After that, I got this whole new savage idea in my head that I wanted to kill her in a hotel room because she had killed my father in a hotel room. We were going to Bali, so I began to plot.
This disturbing video was taken by Heather Mack as she sat behind bars inside one of the most notorious prisons in Indonesia, where she faced a potential sentence of death by facing a firing squad after being convicted of a crime so gruesome and macabre that it made headlines around the world. The details of this case uncover a shocking story in which even the closest of family bonds will be broken. This is the tragic story of Heather Mack and Sheila von Wiese. Before we begin, we would like to send our sincere condolences to the loved ones of Sheila von Wiese, who fell victim to the horrific events described in this case. August the 11th, 2014, 19-year-old Heather Mack arrived with her 62-year-old mother Sheila in Bali for vacation. Sheila had splurged financially on this trip, hoping to reconnect with her daughter and heal their strained relationship. However, unknown to Sheila, Heather had sinister plans for this vacation. In the early morning hours of August the 14th, Sheila and Heather checked into their hotel room at the St. Regis Hotel in Nusa Dua, Bali. During check-in, Sheila discovered that 2 rooms were booked under her name, and she was shown a passport belonging to Tommy Schaefer, Heather's boyfriend. Heather had used Sheila's credit card without her knowledge to book a separate room and airline ticket for Tommy. Upset and disappointed, Sheila stormed off in anger and did not return for the rest of that day. The following day, on August the 12th, Tommy Schaefer arrived at the resort and went to the room that Heather had reserved for him. That night, the couple executed their disturbing plan to attack and murder Sheila von Wiese inside her St. Regis hotel room. After drugging Sheila with sleeping pills, Heather texted Tommy to inform him that everything was ready. When Tommy entered the room, Sheila was drowsy but still conscious. Once inside the room, with the door closed behind them, Tommy picked up a fruit bowl and used it to hit Sheila over the head. Then he and Heather worked together, beating the woman over the head until she finally stopped breathing. Then the couple worked together to dismember the body so it would fit into a suitcase, and they were later seen on CCTV footage carrying the suitcase that carried Sheila's body out of the hotel on a luggage cart and loading it into a taxi cab. The horrific crime left the world shocked to the heartless nature of this brutal attack, leaving many to wonder why Heather would decide to end the life of her own mother in such a brutal way.
Police officials say the 62-year-old's remains were stuffed into a suitcase and found on the Indonesian resort island of Bali. The discovery was made Tuesday. The body was inside the trunk of a taxi parked in front of the upscale St. Regis Hotel. She was half naked with wounds to her head, according to police.
So the question is, who is Heather Mack? And what are the details that would drive a young woman with so much potential down such a dark and tragic path? Heather Mack was born in 1995 to a famous jazz musician, composer James L. Mack, and his wife, Sheila Ann von Wiese. As an only child, Heather enjoyed all of her parents' attention. James Mack was already in his 60s when his daughter was born, but he was actively involved in his daughter's life. Heather Mack seemed to have it all. Born into a privileged household, she had a lavish upbringing in Chicago that included all of the comforts life had to offer. Her parents spoiled her with gifts and left her wanting for nothing. According to friends and family, Heather was the center of her parents' universe. As a close-knit family, the Macks often went on vacation, but oddly, they attracted bad luck every time they went on a holiday. In 2001, when Heather was just 6 years old, the family went on a Royal Caribbean Mediterranean cruise where James cut his foot while swimming. Due to inadequate treatment provided by the ship's physician at that time, the injury got worse, and by the time he got proper treatment, he was partially paralyzed. James filed a lawsuit against the company, which would be settled more than a decade later. Additionally, James Mack battled with colon cancer in the later stages of his life and battled the illness bravely. Even through all of this, the three still went on holidays together. In 2006, when he was 77 years old, James Mack passed away from a pulmonary embolism while in his hotel room during a vacation in Athens, Greece. His wife, Sheila, admitted his body to a Greek morgue before continuing on to Santorini to continue her holiday without her husband, now just with her daughter, Heather. That's when 10-year-old Heather's feelings towards her mother turned sour. Possibly unable to mourn her father properly, not facing her grief suppressed a lot of emotions inside of little Heather. These would surface years later in the most disastrous way possible. James Mack's will, which was written only 5 days before his death, placed his daughter Heather as the sole beneficiary of his millions of dollars while cutting out his wife Sheila entirely. However, years after his death in 2011, the 2001 lawsuit that James had filed against the Royal Caribbean Cruise Company ultimately agreed to settle and paid up $1.5 million. All of that money would have gone to his daughter Heather per his will. But ultimately, $500,000 of the settlement was given to Sheila by a judge. In the following years, the relationship between Heather and Sheila became increasingly strained. In middle school, Heather began skipping classes to hang out with a bad crowd of friends. The millionaire heiress began stealing, defying her mother's will in every way possible, and sneaking out at night. This may all seem like nothing more than a rebellious teen, except whenever they fought, Heather would check into luxurious hotels using her mother's credit card, and she even stole large amounts of money from her mother. The Mack's home was frequented by law enforcement officers, with as many as 86 visits between January of 2004 and June of 2013. Sheila confided in close friends that Heather was physically abusive, and it was getting harder and harder to avoid injuries that she was sustaining from Heather as she got bigger. Heather was incredibly rebellious and even violent towards Sheila. On various occasions, fights would break out between the two when Heather would steal money or credit cards from her mother. When these fights would break out, Heather would often resort to violence, biting, hitting, and punching her mother many times. The helpless woman had to request police intervention each time as Heather became harder and harder to control. Sheila felt that she was unable to protect her spoiled and rebellious teenager. As a senior in Oak Park, 15-year-old Heather fell in love with a young man named Tommy Schaefer. Tommy was unemployed and considered himself a rapper known as Tommy EXX. Tommy was raised by his mother, Kia Walker, after his father left the family. Even though he had friends, people avoided him because he liked to tell tall tales. He greatly exaggerated stories and was always trying to be the center of attention. Sheila believed that he was a bad influence on her already troubled teen. She openly opposed the relationship. His father had abandoned their family when he was very young. Heather had lost hers when she was around 10. The two teens bonded over this, dreaming of spending Heather's inheritance together, but Sheila fought hard to stop this from happening. Once, during one of Heather's runaway stints, Sheila found out the girl had checked into a hotel room with her boyfriend. She reported her credit card stolen. While Heather was let off with a warning, Tommy was charged with disorderly conduct. This caused tension between Heather and Sheila, and it reached a serious point in February of 2011 when, during a disagreement, Heather pushed her mother into the bathroom so hard she fell and broke her arm. After this, she denied her mother access to an ambulance by unplugging the phone. It is obvious that Heather lacked empathy and did not care when causing her mother pain. She broke household items, and Sheila told her friends how hard it was to deal with the child. Heather was arrested once, but her mother refused to press charges. But even after that, things between the two continued to get worse. Heather ran away from home again in January of 2012, following a fight with her mother where she broke plates and picture frames. By now, there was a clear pattern emerging, in which Heather would get into a huge fight with her mother and then run away for extended periods. And still, despite the serious assaults, verbal abuse, and advice by friends and law enforcement officers to press charges, Sheila didn't. She didn't want Heather to have a criminal record, so she tried to love her daughter despite their strained relationship, figuring that in time Heather would come to her senses and grow up, and eventually their relationship could be healed. Concerned for her daughter, Sheila decided to move from Oak River to a high-rise apartment in the Gold Coast of Chicago, thinking that the new environment would be good for her daughter. But soon after, Heather ended up getting pregnant with Tommy's child and dropping out of high school. According to Heather, she had 2 abortions enforced by her mother, and it had been alleged that her mother was looking to get power of attorney over Heather to force a third. For 3 years, Sheila had faced severe physical abuse, but she refused to give up on her daughter. Perhaps as a way to mend broken hearts or have a fresh start with Heather, Sheila booked a trip to Bali, Indonesia in 2013. The 62-year-old flew her daughter first class for over $10,000 a ticket. They checked into the luxurious St. Regis Resort in a lavish room. The unsuspecting woman was trying to save her bond with her daughter, unaware of Heather's destructively sinister motives. Happy photographs of the two would haunt friends and family forever, because behind the sunny smiles lay a deep, dark rift. And unfortunately, Sheila doesn't realize how far apart they had actually grown until it was too late. Tommy had confessed to his cousin, Robert Bibbs, months earlier that his girlfriend asked him to do something vile. She believed the only way out of her mother's control was to kill her. It was also a way out of the abortion that her mother wanted her to get against her will. And with Sheila out of the picture, Heather would inherit her millions, making the money easy to access. Tommy told his cousin that Heather wanted to pay a professional to kill her mother and claimed that she had $50,000 to spend on a hitman. Robert was surprised but advised Tommy on how to go about the gruesome act himself, instead of going through a hitman. The discussions between the two took place on Facebook Messenger, as well as through text messages. If Sheila wanted, all she had to do was sign off on the trust fund, and Heather would receive all of the money, 30% of which belonged to Sheila. But the only problem was, Sheila was not interested in the money. She wanted her daughter to be responsible enough to handle her inheritance. As the discussions went on, Robert advised Tommy on ways to get rid of his girlfriend's mother. The two conspired over text messages and on Facebook, carelessly leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs. Heather secretly took her mother's credit card and booked a business class flight for her boyfriend so that he could follow them on vacation while she and her mother flew first class. She also booked a room for him at the same resort that Sheila had booked for her and her daughter as a way to mend fences and reconnect. Before leaving for the trip, Sheila had emailed her friend Elliot, discussing in detail her concerns about the trip and her daughter's behavior. Elliot warned against the trip, suggesting it was not going to do much to improve their fractured relationship. That night, August the 11th, 2014, just a little after midnight, Sheila and Heather arrived in Bali. While going through their room details at the resort, Sheila was surprised to see 2 rooms had been booked under her name. The receptionist showed a copy of Tommy's passport. She immediately confronted her daughter, resulting in a dispute in the lobby in front of the hotel staff. Heather insisted that Tommy was there to study, but Sheila wasn't buying it. A high school dropout doesn't really fly to Bali to study. Feeling disrespected and annoyed, Sheila stormed off. Tommy arrived at the resort at 12:43 a.m. on August the 12th, just a few hours after his girlfriend and her mother. After he went to his room, Heather replied to his messages about an hour later, saying that her mother was still furious, but she had gone to sleep. Heather snuck out of the room around 1:54 a.m. to Tommy's room, and the two walked the corridors of the hotel until around 2:45 a.m. She returned to her room, and the two messaged each other for about a half an hour, discussing how to murder Sheila. The two continued to text each other, eagerly anticipating their next move. Heather came back out, and the couple went to Tommy's floor around 3:16 a.m. Probably noticing that her daughter was missing, Sheila went to the lobby and spoke to the staff at 3:27 a.m. Heather then came to the lobby to speak to her mother, then returned to their room. The remainder of the night, between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., Heather and Tommy spent hours texting each other. And this is when Heather allegedly drugged her mother with sleeping pills. It appears the two were speaking in code, referring to the murder as the code words, "say hi." Heather said that they should say hi immediately when Tommy replied that she should make her mother completely unconscious, indicating that Sheila should be drugged, as the two planned earlier. Heather goes on to tell Tommy that Sheila had woken up and the pills had not worked well. Tommy told his girlfriend to wait at least 20 minutes before they say hi to make sure that Sheila was asleep. The two planned to say hi to a still groggy Sheila, Heather expressing excitement and saying that she just couldn't wait. The couple decided Heather would carry out the horrendous act. But midway, Heather seemed to be afraid, but she did not have second thoughts. She asked Tommy to assist her in the deed. He told her to cause some commotion and distract Sheila while he hid in a bathroom. In chilling text messages, Heather encourages her boyfriend to be relentless, regardless of what Sheila said or did. Waiting for Sheila to fall asleep, Tommy messaged his cousin again, Robert Bibbs. Robert was surprised that Sheila hadn't died from a sleeping pill overdose. He suggested they drown her, but Tommy told him about the security cameras all over the resort. Finally, they decided that Tommy would hit her with something hard. He texted Heather a picture of a glass fruit basket with a metal handle. The couple decided this was good enough. Tommy planned to jump out and hit Sheila over the head with the fruit bowl, knocking her unconscious, so that he and Heather could kill her together. And then they could claim that Sheila had simply slipped and fallen, hitting her head on the way down. Heather then excused herself from her mother, saying that she was going to get some water. She confirmed that the bowl was a good enough weapon. The two exchanged their last text at around 8:57 a.m. After this, Tommy returned with his girlfriend back into Sheila's room, where they worked together to carry out the vicious attack. As the couple had planned, Tommy picked up the fruit bowl and bludgeoned Sheila over the head with it repeatedly. The couple then beat the 62-year-old woman until she eventually died from choking on her own blood. After killing her mother, Heather and Tommy worked together to cut up Sheila's body into many pieces and stuff it into her suitcase, where they were later seen on the resort's CCTV footage going to the 6th, 3rd, and ground floor, while Heather carried the suitcase containing her mother's body on a hotel luggage cart. At 10:02, Tommy messaged his cousin, Robert Bibbs, confirming the death of Sheila. He expressed no remorse and told his cousin that he did not regret the act. In fact, Robert said that Sheila was a bad person and that it wasn't Tommy's fault for not feeling anything. At 10:43 a.m., Heather and Tommy loaded the luggage cart and brought it to the 6th floor. The couple can be seen carrying bed sheets and other items. They called a cab and loaded the suitcase containing the body, along with the other items, into the trunk of the cab. But as the couple loaded the suitcase into the car, they discovered that it was leaking blood out of the seams of the suitcase. This caused the two of them to panic, and they hurriedly left the bloody suitcase in the trunk of the cab, then told the cab driver they had to run back inside to check out of the hotel. They then went back inside the resort, only to run out of an alternate exit. After waiting for the couple to return for some time, the cab driver concluded that Heather and Tommy weren't coming back, so he opened the trunk to unload their luggage, and that's when he noticed blood all over the suitcase. The cab driver, along with the resort security, took the suitcase to the police station. When the suitcase was opened, the scene before them was hair-raising. The officers discovered Sheila's half-naked body stuffed inside. They could see that she had been bludgeoned to death with a heavy object, the majority of the blows falling on her face, leading to fractures of her nose and jawbone. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation after a bone in her nose broke, restricting her airway, causing her to suffocate on the blood in her mouth and throat. The manhunt for Heather and Tommy didn't last very long, as they were ultimately arrested the very next day, found asleep at another hotel less than a mile from where the crime had occurred. Back in the USA, Tommy's cousin, Robert Bibbs, saw on the news that his cousin and his girlfriend had been arrested, as reports of the murder made headlines. He frantically texted his friends about Tommy, pretending to be shocked that he was in jail for murder. But the series of texts that he had exchanged with Tommy before the murder also made Robert an accomplice to the crime. Initially, the couple said that a gang of armed robbers had taken them hostage. They alleged that the robbers had killed Sheila, and the couple somehow managed to run away, too afraid to go to the authorities. After further questioning, Tommy altered his story, claiming that he had killed Sheila in self-defense. He said Sheila had become infuriated when the couple broke the news about the pregnancy and had attempted to fight him and his girlfriend. He claimed that he struck the 62-year-old woman in self-defense. Heather made a similar claim, saying that Sheila was incredibly abusive. This was, of course, contradictory to the police reports that had been filed by Sheila previously, and in all of those incidents, Heather had been found to be the abusive one. But Heather claimed that she had not been in the room when the murder occurred, and that Tommy had stuffed her mother into the suitcase by himself. The penalty for murder in Indonesia is death, which the then 18-year-old Heather was afraid of. While awaiting trial, she was only spared from the Indonesian firing squad because she was pregnant. At first, authorities were skeptical of her pregnancy, but once it was confirmed, she was given certain privileges while incarcerated in prison. On the 19th of September 2014, Tommy pled guilty to killing Sheila, and Heather confessed to being an accomplice. The couple was charged with murder on the 14th of January 2015. They faced a potential maximum charge of death by firing squad. But in April of 2015, Heather Mack was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Tommy Schaefer was given 18 years. Heather's sentence was more lenient because she had given birth while in jail, and also because the panel of judges was convinced that her role in the murder was not very active compared to Tommy's. A year later, in September of 2015, Robert Bibbs, Tommy's cousin, was charged with conspiring against Sheila and received 9 years in prison at his trial in June of 2017. During her stay in prison, Heather had access to a cell phone and her social media accounts. Videos of her smoking and partying in prison became viral, and people from all over the world started highlighting her apparently carefree lifestyle in prison.
Not exactly hard time, is it? That's mom killer Heather Mack having fun dancing while she's in prison on the island paradise of Bali. Heather is wearing makeup and looks happy-go-lucky as she playfully sticks her tongue out. Young lover's daughter, Stella, was born in prison and is now 6 months old. This video shows Schaefer cradling Stella while mom was dancing.
In these clips, Heather can be seen dancing with other inmates, as well as casually discussing how too much Coca-Cola was causing her daughter's hair to fall out. In some videos, Heather can be seen cradling her baby, Stella, along with her convicted boyfriend, Tommy. Then, Heather made a shocking confession in a video that was later taken down.
So, this is a video that I need to make. A lot of the times, since I've been a kid, I've heard the truth sets you free, the truth sets you free. And I never understood, but I'm Heather Mack, and I want to be set free. I don't want to live in a lie anymore. When I was 10, my mother killed my father in a hotel in Athens, Greece. 2 weeks before I came to Bali, I found out that she killed my father. And I made it up in my heart, in my mind, my soul, in my blood, in the oxygen running through my body, I wanted to kill my mother. First, I asked Tommy Schaefer to help me find somebody to kill my mom for $50,000. And he said no. After that, I got this whole new savage idea in my head that I wanted to kill her in a hotel room because she had killed my father in a hotel room. We were going to Bali, so I began to plot. I began turning off Tommy's phone, taking Tommy's phone when he was asleep, starting in Chicago, taking Tommy's phone and having conversations between Tommy and myself, texting myself, having fake conversations, and then deleting them before he could see them. I did that because part of me knew that with this plan of killing my mom in a hotel, that I might get arrested. I didn't want to get arrested by myself in a different country. So I came to Bali and I told Tommy that he was going to come here for a vacation.
In her confession, Heather claimed that her mother had killed her father and that the conversations between herself and Tommy were just Heather all along. And it was Sheila who was abusive towards her in her teenage years. However, Heather's uncle and aunt argued that the statements were made up, which seems to be corroborated by the evidence that Heather's father, James Mack, had died of a pulmonary embolism at the age of 77, and no suspicion of foul play was found in his case. And the fact that Sheila never pressed criminal charges against her daughter, despite numerous injuries acquired over the years, seems to indicate that Sheila had not been the abuser, but in fact was the abused. After raising her daughter Stella in prison for 2 years, Heather had to let go of her daughter as it was given to a foster family. She was satisfied with the family and they were doing the best that they could. Heather received early release in October of 2021, having served only 7 years in prison. She wanted to stay in Bali, as she claimed Chicago was unsafe, but she was extradited to the U.S. because she had no visa, and of course neither did her daughter. Heather was arrested when she arrived in the U.S. in November of 2021 and was kept in a federal penitentiary. Her trial was originally set for July of 2023, but in June of 2023, Heather entered a guilty plea for the crimes that she had been charged with, and the length of her sentence in America now lies in the hands of a judge.